Mridul Dawar, a GMAT ace, a brilliant scholar, a versatile personality who has already ingrained his name in the history of SRCC through his commendable achievements. We welcome you, Mridul. Being the highest scorer in GMAT with a score of 770 in the first year of graduation is definitely considered as a Herculean task for many of us. You have set a benchmark, and people look up to your score. So, what was your reaction upon getting such a terrific score?
I was exhilarated, ecstatic, and any other good words that you can find. Yeah, I was really, really happy. And so my parents, it was so for my mother, it was a somewhat mixed reaction because, of course, my score was phenomenal, but at the same time, she realized that okay, my son is going abroad. So yeah, somewhat a mixed reaction, but overall, it was amazing.
Can you also tell us about the exam and your preparation for the same? Like which all books, sources, or study material did you refer for your preparation?
Okay, so I also appeared for the SAT. So I'll make this a bit detailed answer. Okay, so the thing that went wrong with me for the SAT was that I focused on doing a lot of mocks without analyzing each mock separately. Right. So one very important thing that we need to keep in mind is that the quality of preparation matters and not the number of questions that you attempt. Okay. So a lot of people do this that for the GMAT they think that okay हम हर हफ्ते एक mock देंगे and that'll do everything for me. That's not going to work for you, right? The most important thing is after you give a mock, you see what aspects you went wrong on and accordingly take corrective action. If you don't take corrective action, you don't. काम करते रहोगे result नहीं आएगा. Okay. So I started my preparation on the 12th of December 2015. I remember the exact date, yeah. And I went to a coaching center in Hudson Lane. And I chose Hudson Lane because it's pretty convenient. I live nearby only. And one piece of advice, if you at all go for coaching, opt for a center that's somewhat closer to your home. Because this entire journey of giving the GMAT is long and arduous and very demanding. So you shouldn't have one extra reason of not going to the coaching center, right? So eliminate that reason. So okay, I'll speak about the quantitative section first. So initially, I used to apply my conventional techniques that we usually learn in school and in for CBSE exams. So they do play out well for you for some time, but eventually you realize that to get beyond a certain level, you need to adopt the techniques that are being taught to you. Okay, because these techniques require less of your brain, and these are less taxing, and they work better when you are in a very stressed environment. So that's important. Trust the techniques that are being taught to you for the quantitative section, right? And one another very important aspect is that when you think that a particular question cannot be attempted in a reasonable amount of time, just leave it and move on. That's extremely important because if you take it to your ego that oh I'm a SRCC graduate and I can't attempt this simple question, then you won't be able to crack the exam. So this took me some time to realize, but eventually when I got this point, then my exam was very good. So I'll be clear about this part. So on my actual GMAT, I didn't do every question right, obviously, but I had this in my mind that I have to do the best I can and not get disturbed about not getting a very high score. Okay, so I left a question without any qualms or reservations whatsoever. Of course, ऐसा भी नहीं होगा कि तुम सारे क्वेश्चन छोड़ दो वो भी of course it will be very bad for you, but with practice you will realize that there are certain questions that you can leave and certain questions that you need to attempt, and you will also realize what a reasonable amount of time is. Okay, so that's one point for the quantitative section, and so these are my two advices for the quantitative section. The first is ego wala point, and the second is the point about second wala kaun sa tha? Yeah, yeah, time management and trust the techniques that are being taught to you. Okay, and in general, uh, okay, and now let's move on to the verbal section. So in the verbal section, you will have reading comprehension, you have critical reasoning, and then you have sentence correction. So sentence correction, you'll have to practice a lot. It's completely based on grammar rules, and after you will have to know these rules. There's no other way out. And for the SE section, I would recommend that start do the OG, and after you do a question, just don't lay back and relax, right? So even if you get the question right, what you need to do is copy the question stem and paste it on Google. Okay. So and when you do that, you will see many pages that are essentially discussing different aspects and nitty-gritties of that particular question. So go to these forums, and I consulted two of these. The first is Manhattan Prep, and the second is Magbushi Mat. So both of these forums provide free answers to questions and detailed discussions. And trust me, these discussions are extremely enriching. And the answers that were given on the back of the OG were okay, didn't seem good to me, very honestly. So those didn't suffice for me. So itni mehnat karni padi thi, but it does pay off, trust me. And this is for the sentence correction part. And of course, don't move on to from one question to the other, thinking that if I practice more questions, it will be beneficial to me. Again, I'm re-emphasizing this point: the quality of the questions matter, and not the quantity. And of course, this seems like a hoopla at first when you don't start preparing, but when you actually get down to the preparation stage, you realize this. So don't make a quantitative target of how many questions you need to do in a day or of how many mocks you need to give in a week. That won't work for you. At least it didn't work for me. You need to see what aspects you need to focus on, capitalize on your strengths, and of course, correct your weaknesses. So this is the SC. And for the reading comprehension section, okay, a lot of times people face the problem that the passage that comes up is not of their area of interest or expertise. So let me assure you, the GMAT doesn't expect you to know about biology or what Galileo did when he was young. मतलब वो कुछ नहीं पता तो कोई बात नहीं, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. What they need from you is that you should understand what the structure of the passage is. Okay, and if you know what the structure of the passage is, what the author must have had in mind while designing the passage, if you understand that structure, then you will be able to answer the questions. You don't need to get to the nitty gritties and details of whatever topic, whatever the topic is talking about. So you don't need to understand the topic completely. You need to understand the structure and why essentially the author is saying this point. So the details do not matter. The inference and the understanding matters, even in this case. If you are able to do that, then I think you'll be able to answer the questions. And about the critical reasoning section, you'll have to answer. You'll have to, yeah, prepare. So there are different types of critical reasoning section. There are different types of questions. First is inference, and then we have strengthen and weaken. And if you have a third one, then I don't remember because I gave it 2 years back. So for this, you will need a lot of practice if you're not naturally good at it. And it's very important that you understand what the question is asking of you. So I'll give you an example. So in an inference question, you must know that you only need to answer what is definitely true, what can definitely be inferred out of the question stem that is given. Okay, so the answer will change depending upon whether it is an inference question or a strengthen or weaken question. So that needs to be kept in mind, and that will definitely come with practice. That shouldn't be a problem. So I've covered the quantitative section, I've covered the verbal section, and we also have integrated reasoning and the AWA, analytical writing assessment. So for people of DevSoc, this is a good news. You have a bit of an edge in the AWA section because I spent some time in DevSoc in my first year, and I ended up getting a 6 out of 6 on the AWA. Yeah, so yeah, it helps a lot. So I would recommend that you should worry about these sections only when your quantitative and verbal sections are sorted, because these sections are essentially not counted in calculating your final score. Okay, so and the IR section, okay, I didn't do much of practice for this section, so I can't speak about it, but it turned out well. Okay, of course. Okay, this is done, and I'll tell you a little bit about how the percentile is calculated and how the marks are calculated. So, in getting your final percentile, your verbal section matters a lot more than the quantitative section. So, if you think that you'll do well in one section and you'll basically not do your best preparation for the other section, it will not work for you. And the reasons are the following. A, for the quantitative section, many colleges have specific benchmarks that you need to fulfill. So, if I remember rightly, Oxford's Masters in Financial Economics program, it specifically states that you need to have a certain level, a certain score in the quantitative section to be eligible to even apply for the program. So, can't leave the quantitative section. This is the part A. The part B, the second part is that the verbal section will play a very big role in determining your final percentile. So, my percentile on the final GMAT for the quantitative section was 87. And so, if you go down from 51 to 50, your percentile drops to 87 in the quantitative section, right? And on the verbal section, my score was 45 and my percentile was 99. Okay, so an amalgamation of 87 percentile and 99 percentile makes what? Not 93, 99 percentile. Yeah, so my final percentile was 99, and which corresponds to a 770 score. Okay, and I'm saying this with certainty because that also happened when I gave an official mock, which is released by the GMAT. And by the way, we have two official mocks which are available free of cost by the GMAT. So before you give the exam, in order to test your preparedness for them, you can definitely give these. So I think I've covered all the sections, right? Yeah. Okay. And don't stress too much. And I'm re-emphasizing that it's not about the number of questions you do. It's about the quality of your preparation. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, so we will, a lot of students prepare for SAT and complete the graduation abroad. Whereas with GMAT, it's something that comes into picture later on.
Yeah.
So was GMAT always a part of your plan?
Actually, even I applied for the SAT and scored somewhat badly in that. Okay, let's put it that way. So after my bad performance on the SAT, I realized that to crack such foreign exams, it's of course it's not a prerequisite, but it's very important to plan early and essentially start early. So a senior of mine in my school only, DPS Archivaram, so he appeared for his SET pretty early and he got free. And that's how I got to know that if you definitely have to appear for such exams, give these exams when the opportunity cost of giving the exam is the lowest, right? So I'm an eco-honor student, and my first year was relatively free, and I knew that I would be swamped with work in my second year. So I said, yeah, what the hell? First year, mein dekhe kaam niptao. So yeah, so I did want to go abroad from my from the very initial days. So that worked out for me, and that was my plan. Yeah.
So like you appeared for GMAT in your first year itself.
Yeah.
So how did you plan out the rest of the 2 years of college?
Rest of the 2 years, okay. So I didn't plan out the rest of the 2 years of college, but the planning it out meticulously is somewhat Herculean task. So, but I did have some priorities in mind. So after my GMAT was over, I knew that European business schools especially focus a lot on your academic achievements. So, if you want to go to a European B school, two things are extremely crucial. One is your academics, and second is your standardized test score, that is GMAT or GRE. So, at that time, my CGPA was somewhat low, and I focused on my academics a lot, and as a result, I got my CGPA above 9, and that I think worked out very well for me in my B school application and subsequently in my scholarship application, because on in scholarship applications also what they focus a lot on your GMAT and even to an even larger extent on your academic performance. So academics are extremely important. I can't focus this. Yeah, I shouldn't say it anymore, but it's uh, humongously important, academics.
GMAT and GRE are often considered as interchangeable exams for getting into dream foreign universities. So, what is the main distinction between these two exams? Did you appear for GRE as well?
No, I didn't appear for the GRE, but in order to understand which exam you actually need to appear for, you need to understand which tests are accepted at what schools and for what courses. Okay, so if you talk about India, GMAT and GRE are almost equivalent because ISB accepts both GMAT and GRE scores. ISB initially used to accept only GMAT scores, but now they treat GRE scores equivalently. Okay, now if you talk about the rest of the world, in European business schools, the GMAT is largely preferred over the GRE. So, if you talk about LSE's Masters in Finance course, so even though they state that GMAT and GRE are both acceptable, but they have a strong preference for GMAT, for the GMAT. And in if you look at other countries like Spain, in Spain we have IE Business School. So, as far as my knowledge goes, they don't even accept a GRE score. So, if you're pretty sure about a finance program, and if you're very sure about a management degree, then GMAT is the test that you need to appear for. However, if you're also sure that the US is the place you want to be, then GRE would work perfectly for you also, because almost all American schools treat the GMAT and the GRE equally. So it doesn't make much of a difference. So, for instance, if you're from an economics background and the US is the country for you, and you're a little confused between going for a management degree and going for, say, an economics program, then giving the GRE would be a safer bet for you, because the American schools accept both the scores alike, and you're not sure between management and economics. So keep this in mind. A lot of management courses would accept a GRE score, but most of the economics programs would not accept a GMAT score. So you need to figure out a little about what exactly you want to pursue after your graduation, and the continent you want to pursue that course in. So depending on America and Europe, the choices will differ.
Okay, so talking about universities, students often dream of getting such extraordinary scores so that they can apply to their favorite colleges
Yeah.
and universities. So, what all universities and colleges did you apply for, and what was the procedure for the same?
Okay. So I'll tell you about what my state of mind was when I went through the entire process. I didn't have all the information that required to make an informed decision about which course and which university to apply for, actually. So in my second year, I was pretty fixated on the UK and on a master's in finance course. But as my information set expanded, I realized that going in continental Europe would be a better option, and I ended up not applying in the UK at all. And so that's what happened. So before going abroad, that needs to be kept in mind. Okay. So after you have all of this information, you need to decide which country. So I've gotten through HEC Paris, by the way. So I'm going to France. So the reason why I chose this college was that it ranks pretty amazingly on the Financial Times, and it's ranked number 2 worldwide for Master in Management. And also they offer an amazing scholarship. So for those interested in MIM programs, the Eiffel scholarship offered by the French government is an amazing option that you can explore. And I also explored that and eventually got it. Yeah, fine. So yeah, so this information set needs to be complete so that you can avail all of the opportunities. A lot of people didn't even know about this Eiffel scholarship, and for this scholarship, you have to necessarily apply in round one. So that is why I focus. That is why I advise people to get on with to get over with these standardized tests a little early on, because after that you have a lot of scope to research, and this research is extremely crucial, because it tells you about what scholarship opportunities are available. It tells you it allows you to make a better decision about what course to pursue. Like I am eventually going for an MIM, whereas in my second year I wouldn't even have thought about an MIM. I was extremely fixated on a master's in finance course. So that's why starting on early is pretty important. And also about MBAs. So in India, we have okay, we're pretty fixated about MBAs, doing an MBA pretty early on in their careers. So yeah, I had the same scenario. So I initially wanted to pursue an MBA immediately after graduation. So I was looking at the US and mainly at the US essentially, and I wanted to go to these top schools immediately after graduation. But what I didn't realize was that I didn't realize two things actually. First, I couldn't get in immediately after graduation without any work experience. And the second is that I should not go to these schools immediately after graduation. So, if you go to such premium schools and you, in order to contribute better to the discussions that take place in your class, you need quality work experience. Okay. So, if at all you're targeting the US for your MBAs, so I would suggest that it should only be after gaining some pretty substantial and quality work experience. So the 5 years average work experience that they have is for a reason, and we need to appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay, and also students are concerned about the SOPs and the LORs that these universities and
Yeah.
colleges require. So, like, how does one go about preparing an SOP and acquiring an LOR?
Okay, so not all colleges require an SOP per se. So some colleges have different essay questions. So my college had eight essay questions. Eight, yeah. Okay. So my college had eight essay questions, and what they usually do is they prescribe a word limit or a character limit to answer those questions. So my advice to you would be that first on a piece of paper or on a word doc, just write whatever trash comes to your mind. Okay. So the filtering stage should only be after you've exhausted your mind completely. If you start that filtering process while writing down whatever you actually write down, then what you will get is a suboptimal result. Okay. So the right thing to do is write down everything, and only after that, pick and choose what content you want to display into your application. And when that happens, you will realize that after about 5 to 6 edits, your answer would not only be succinct and lucid, but it would also be extremely effective. Okay, so that's one mistake you should avoid in your SOPs. And also, of course, be honest, because if you question about something and if you faff, the admissions committee will catch you definitely. They're seasoned people, and ठीक है झूठ बोलने से कभी कभी फायदा हो जाता है, but I really don't recommend that you should lie on your SOPs. Be as honest as possible, and I think they will appreciate that. And you also spoke about an LOR, right? Yeah, so for an LOR, so just to ensure that there is no hindrance in getting a good LOR, you should keep your marks good. So when I approached my professor for an LOR, he first considered my performance throughout, and he also looked at my class participation. So essentially, if you have a good interaction with your teacher and the teacher essentially trusts you to do well in the college that you want to go to, he will give you an LOR, no problem.
Sometimes parents are reluctant to send their children abroad for higher education. So, were you ever caught up in this task of convincing your parents to be sure about the path you wish to choose or to believe in you? I mean, how did they feel about your decision to go abroad?
अच्छा वैसे you should also talk to my parents about this. But ठीक है इतना time नहीं है interview में तो it's all right. हाँ, of course, initially they're a little reluctant to send you abroad, and as I told you, on the day of the GMAT, my mother had a little mixed reaction. So at one time she was, on one hand she was happy that my score was phenomenal, but on the other hand she was also uh, okay, burdened with the sudden realization that my son is going abroad, and Punjabi Maya to hoga. So हाँ देखो ये होता है, but I think there's a proverb in Hindi that says कि अगर चिड़िया को उड़ना है तो घोंसला छोड़ना पड़ेगा. So of course I think it's an arduous journey, and it's a herculean task to leave your comfort zone and go to some other country and essentially survive on your own. But I think in the end it will be completely worth it. So what you need to look at is the kind of long-term development of personality and of your acumen that the institute and the course has to offer. And if it is good for you in the long run, then man maro ar jao. Not exactly man maro, but of course, yeah, you'll have to get the courage to go abroad.
Okay. Also, Vidul, you mentioned earlier that like you got a scholarship.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect that the financial outlay of going abroad to study is actually huge, and sometimes it becomes an hindrance for many students who
Yeah,
want to
definitely.
go to study abroad.
Definitely.
So, like, how would you advise them, and how have you personally dealt with the finance part of going abroad?
Okay, so first, I think I'd advise people that if you think that your chances of getting a scholarship are not extremely bright, and so be honest with yourself first of all. So every person knows his caliber and where he's standing essentially. We don't need to be over optimistic about things. So if you think that your chances of getting an external scholarship are somewhat not as bright as they should be, or as we'd like them to be, then you should opt for a course where you can somewhat comfortably manage to go even without a scholarship. So one reason for choosing France was also this. So I could afford to go to HEC even without any external aid. So I decided to go to this college, and only subsequently did my scholarship result come on. Yeah. So that was one thing. So this is my advice. There are some people who are pretty certain about getting an external scholarship. So वो तो चलो ठीक है. That's good for them. But let me say this to you. Uh, there's somewhat of a hawa attached with foreign education, that it's extremely phenomenally expensive. That's true to some extent, but that's only partially true. So if you look at some countries like France and Germany, they have very reasonable education, and the quality of education that they have to offer is par excellence. So my suggestion would be to not let preconceived notions make your career decisions for you. Take an informed decision. Do your research on the internet. So research yourself. Talk to people who've gone abroad, because let's be honest with ourselves. Not all academically bright people who go abroad are born with a silver spoon, right? So a lot of people take financial aid. A lot of people take loans, and they somehow manage. So before shunning this option of foreign education, you need to take an informed call, because it's an incredibly rewarding process, a rewarding experience, and that's what I've heard, and I hope that is. But okay, so that's what I have to say.
After getting into a college like SRCC,
Yeah,
students tend to lose their focus on academics. As you've already emphasized the importance on academics,
yeah,
and being the one of the topper among the toppers in
that's
SRCC
kind
in
of you.
economic honors. So, what do you think should be the ideal or the minimum score one should be maintaining throughout his graduation if he's planning to apply abroad?
Uh, okay. Look, there isn't a minimum score, to be honest. But if you're specifically looking at scholarships, and if you're aiming for one of those, then okay, I think nine should be a score that you should strive for. But that's only for scholarship. Okay. If you want to get, if you want to only get in, then I think it's somewhat of a Cobb-Douglas function. So all of the parameters matter, and of course they have different importances. But as long as you can back up deficiency in one area with excellence in the other, then it should work for you. But otherwise, I think, especially for European B schools, academics are extremely important for European B schools in particular.
Yeah, so you mentioned academics, but like throughout the college life,
Yeah,
students often are part of different societies.
yeah,
They do internships and write research papers.
yeah, yeah.
So, what kind of an emphasis should a student give to these internships, PORs, and like different research papers when they're planning to go for?
Look, so these colleges do not have a bucket list of what exactly they require in an applicant, right? So, more than accomplishing the task, what matters is what you've learned from the task. Okay. So, the entire purpose of a position of responsibility is so that you can share with the interview panel what you learned from that experience, what kind of leadership experience you have, what kind of initiative you took, which made a huge difference in the way the society functions or in any particular activity. Okay. And these societies are important because they also help you to develop your team skills. And team skills are very important, especially if you go in an environment where a German is sitting besides you, and on the left hand you have a Pakistani, and you have to mingle with them and do a project together. So these communication skills and people skills are really important. And the development of these skills and the gaining of these experiences is what matters to the interview panel.
We would like to thank Mridul for being a part of Crack It with the Sites. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and we hope that it will inspire many more to follow in your footsteps and probably achieve even greater heights. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Mridul.
thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.